Cape Cod, Massachusetts, a beach town families have vacationed at for generations, close enough to Boston for a day trip. It is now home to one of the highest concentrations of great white sharks on Earth. Sharks strong enough to sever a seal in half in a single bite, hunting in water 3 feet deep, yards from where people are swimming. For 82 years, none of them ever killed a person here. Then, in a single month in 2018, it happened twice. So what changed? Not the sharks. 2 federal signatures, decades old, that nobody ever thought to be afraid of. His name was Arthur Medici. 26 years old, boogie boarding just off Newcomb Hollow Beach in Wellfleet on September 15, 2018, when a great white shark closed the distance in seconds and severed his femoral artery in 3 feet of water. He was dead before the ambulance reached the hospital. 1 month earlier, 30 yards off a beach in Truro, a 61-year-old man swimming near a group of seals was pulled from the water, bleeding from his leg and torso. He survived. Medici didn't. Here's the part that should unsettle you more than the attack itself. Neither man did anything wrong. No chum in the water, no provoking, no swimming at dusk in murky conditions. 2 ordinary days at the beach, and a predator that hadn't killed anyone in Massachusetts since 1936, killed twice in 5 weeks. The chain that put them there started in 1972 with the Marine Mammal Protection Act. Before it, Massachusetts and Maine both ran active bounty programs on gray seals, paying hunters per animal killed, framed at the time as protecting the local fishing industry from competition. It worked exactly as designed. By the 1960s, the gray seal population had been hunted down to just a few thousand animals scattered along the entire New England coast, effectively erased from beaches where colonial-era logs describe seals hauling out by the thousand. The 1972 law made killing them illegal overnight, ending the bounty era in a single legislative session. It worked. And it worked on a scale most people never picture when they hear seal recovery. A species reduced to a few thousand animals scattered along hundreds of miles of coastline came back to an estimated 50 to 70,000 in Massachusetts waters alone, with broader regional counts reported far higher. Estimates vary by study, but every count agrees on the same thing: a rebound from near zero inside 50 years. To put that in perspective, that's the population of a small American city, reassembled from almost nothing, floating just offshore of beaches that hadn't seen a seal haul out in living memory. Great white sharks eat seals almost exclusively once they reach adult size, and in 1997, the United States gave them federal protection too. Nobody who voted for either law was thinking about the other, but a fully protected predator and a fully protected prey species, recovering on the same stretch of coastline at the same time, produces a very specific outcome: more sharks, hunting closer to shore, because that's exactly where their food now is. Marine biologist Greg Skomal, who has tagged and tracked Cape Cod's white sharks since 2009, has said plainly that the sharks aren't behaving abnormally. They're doing exactly what 50 years of conservation policy set them up to do. The pattern didn't start in 2018. In July 2012, a body surfer at Ballston Beach in Truro was bitten on the leg and survived. One of the first confirmed white shark bites on a human in Massachusetts in decades. In 2014, 2 women kayaking near Plymouth, watching seals from the water, were knocked overboard when a white shark struck from beneath, close enough together that the bite marks on one kayak were later confirmed by a state biologist as predatory, not investigatory. Then August 2018, 30 yards off Truro. Then September 2018, 3 feet of water in Wellfleet. 4 incidents in 6 years, each one closer to a fatality than the last, all of it converging on a beach 2 miles from where Steven Spielberg set a fictional town called Amity Island in 1975, and called the movie Jaws. That's not a coincidence worth glossing over, and it runs deeper than geography. Spielberg filmed on Martha's Vineyard, an island reached only by ferry from the Cape. Not a short drive from Wellfleet, but close enough that its waters belong to the same shark population Arthur Medici died in decades later. After the film's release in June 1975, real fishermen up and down the East Coast started entering shark-killing tournaments in a wave scientists later called the Jaws effect, chasing trophy-sized great whites the way Quint chased the fictional one. Combined with commercial overfishing, catch records show white shark numbers along the Northwest Atlantic falling sharply through the late 1970s and 1980s. By 1996, the International Union for Conservation of Nature had listed the species as vulnerable. The following year, the United States gave it federal protection. Spielberg himself has since said on the record that he regrets the decimation of the shark population his own movie helped cause. Which means the same fear that Jaws planted in a generation of beachgoers is, through a 50-year chain of cause and effect, part of the reason those beachgoers' grandchildren are now swimming in water where real sharks hunt. Massachusetts isn't alone in this either. Shark sightings and tagging operations have expanded steadily up the New England coast in the years since Medici's death, from Rhode Island to Maine, tracking the same seal populations as they spread into new territory. The predator-prey relationship that returned to Cape Cod first is now following the food source wherever it goes, which means the version of this story playing out in Wellfleet in 2018 is, in effect, a preview of what's arriving further north. Beach towns that spent decades marketing themselves on calm family swimming now run seasonal shark safety briefings for lifeguards who were toddlers the last time a fatal attack happened here, briefings built entirely around a threat their own parents never had to plan for. By now, you'd expect this to be a story about a shark that changed. It isn't. To understand why, you have to understand what these animals actually are. And here's where almost nobody, even people who've read every Cape Cod headline, knows the rest of the story. Every white shark tracked off Cape Cod has a name and a file. OSARCH and the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy have tagged and followed individual sharks for over a decade, giving each one a name, a satellite tag, and a public tracker anyone can check from their phone, the same way you'd track a flight. This season, the Conservancy tagged a 10-foot female they named Marty, after the in-store robot at a local grocery chain that helped fund the research. Since being tagged in July, Marty has triggered shoreline receivers off North Truro more than a dozen times, each ping a public, time-stamped record of an apex predator a few hundred yards from a public beach. Further down the same population, OSARCH has followed a female named Unamaki, linked to the same Northwest Atlantic group that researchers believe splits its year between Canadian waters and the Cape Cod aggregation every late summer and fall. Another tracked female, Miss Costa, made headlines of her own when her signal suddenly reversed course mid-migration. Scientists didn't know why. Their best guess was that she was pregnant and turning back toward a suspected pupping ground. That single sentence contains an admission most people never hear. Marine biologists who can track an individual shark's GPS coordinates to the mile still don't know, with certainty, where white sharks give birth. Nobody does. No scientist in the entire history of the field has ever filmed a great white shark mating or giving birth in the wild. Not once. Researchers call it one of the last true holy grails of shark science. In July 2023, off the coast of California, a research team may have caught the closest thing to proof anyone has ever recorded. Diving near a spot where several visibly pregnant adult females had been photographed days earlier, researchers filmed a 5-foot shark, pure white rather than the gray of an adult, swimming slowly near the surface. One of the large pregnant females had dived minutes before the smaller shark appeared. The team didn't share what they'd caught until January 2024, and it may be the first sighting in the entire recorded history of marine biology of a live great white shark newborn. Scientists are still debating it because that's how thin the evidence base is for one of the most studied predators in the ocean. A single grainy encounter counts as a landmark. That gap in knowledge isn't trivia. It's the reason everything else about this animal carries so much weight. Strip away the Cape Cod headlines, and the biology underneath is stranger than the attacks. Sharks as a lineage predate trees. The first sharks appear in the fossil record more than 400 million years ago, tens of millions of years before anything resembling a tree existed on land. A great white swimming off Wellfleet today is running hardware descended from a design that outlasted at least 4 mass extinctions, including the one that took the dinosaurs. Its skin isn't scaled the way a fish's is. It's covered in millions of tiny tooth-like structures called dermal denticles, each one shaped like a tiny hook angled toward the tail, which is why the skin feels smooth if you stroke it head to tail and like sandpaper in reverse. That structure cuts drag through water so effectively that swimsuit manufacturers have copied the pattern directly into competitive racing fabric. Unlike most fish, a great white has no swim bladder to control buoyancy. Instead, it relies on an enormous oil-filled liver, sometimes close to 1/4 of its total body weight, to keep from sinking, which means a shark that stops swimming for too long can begin to drift toward the bottom. And its favored hunting method exploits the one visual trick every seal is vulnerable to: attacking from directly below, using the shark's dark gray back to disappear against the deep water and its white underside to vanish into the sunlit surface from beneath, closing the final distance in a burst so fast that a successful strike can launch the shark's entire body clear out of the water. A full breach, seal still in its jaws. Great whites also travel farther than almost anything else in the ocean. Tagged sharks have been tracked crossing entire ocean basins, migrating between feeding grounds thousands of miles apart on a schedule so consistent that researchers can predict, within weeks, when a specific individual will show up off a specific coastline. One shark tracked from South Africa to Australia, and partway back, completed the longest confirmed migration ever recorded for any fish, roughly 20,000 kilometers, about 12,000 miles, round trip, navigating open ocean with no landmarks. Using a sense of magnetic orientation, scientists still don't fully understand. The same navigational precision brings individual sharks back to Cape Cod's beaches at almost the same point on the calendar, year after year. Consider the bite that killed Arthur Medici. Based on computer modeling of a large adult's jaw and skull, researchers estimate a great white's maximum bite force at around 4,000 pounds of force. Not a measured bite, a modeled one, but still roughly the crushing force of 3 small cars stacked on a single point. It arrives fast. A great white can hit a burst speed of up to 35 miles an hour, comparable to an orca's top speed and faster than any human swimmer will ever move, covering the distance from open water to a swimmer's leg in a matter of seconds. And it finds its target using a sense humans don't have at all. Great whites carry hundreds of gel-filled pores across their snouts called the ampullae of Lorenzini, capable of detecting electrical fields as faint as 5 billionths of a volt, sensitive enough to pick up the electrical signal of a heartbeat through open water. Every one of those systems, the speed, the bite, the electrosensing, evolved for one purpose: hunting seals in exactly the conditions Cape Cod now offers in abundance. None of it is aimed at people. Most bites on humans are believed to be cases of investigatory error, a shark testing an unfamiliar shape in murky, seal-populated water, releasing after the first bite once it registers the mistake. That's cold comfort to Arthur Medici's family. A single test bite from an animal capable of that kind of force doesn't need a second bite to be fatal. And that returns us to the deeper mystery, because for all of that raw capability, this is also one of the most reproductively fragile large predators in the ocean. Female great whites don't reach sexual maturity until their 30s, after decades spent simply surviving. Longer than it takes most human parents to become grandparents. When they do reproduce, litters run somewhere between 2 and 17 pups, once every 2 to 3 years, and pup survival in the wild is nowhere close to guaranteed. A tiger shark can rebound from population loss in a matter of years. A white shark population needs decades, sometimes generations, to recover from the same losses. The same slow, cautious biology that makes their reproduction nearly impossible to observe is the reason the IUCN lists the species as vulnerable, even while headlines describe sharks swarming the Cape in record numbers. Growing sightings and a growing population are not the same category of good news. One is visible from a beach parking lot. The other takes decades of tagging data to even estimate. That's the paradox underneath the paradox. The sharks showing up on Cape Cod beaches in growing numbers are proof a 50-year conservation experiment worked, but the species behind those numbers remains one of the slowest recovering predators on the planet. One that still hasn't let a single scientist witness how the next generation is even born. 2 federal signatures brought predator and prey back to the same coastline at the same time. What they didn't do is give us any real understanding of the animal now living a few hundred yards from Newcomb Hollow Beach. Cape Cod hasn't waited for that understanding to catch up. In the years since Medici's death, the state has funded rescue stretchers, dune vehicles, and satellite phones at beaches where cell service used to drop out entirely. Lifeguards now train specifically for femoral artery bleeds, the same injury that killed Medici, because responders on scene that September afternoon didn't have the equipment to stop the bleeding in time. Drone patrols scan the shallows every summer morning before swimmers are allowed in. None of it stops a shark from being where the seals are. All of it is built around a harder truth. This coastline isn't reverting to what it was before 1972. It's arriving at something new, a place where a 50-year-old law and a 30-year-old law finally overlapped, and the only real choice left is how fast the people living there adapt to sharing it. Go back to that number. 82 years without a fatal attack in Massachusetts, then 2 incidents in 5 weeks. It wasn't a change in the shark. It was 2 laws, signed decades apart by people who never met, finally finishing the same sentence. The sharks came back exactly on schedule. We're the ones who forgot to expect them.